Hello, welcome to Biology, the scientific study of life. Darwin's theory explains a wide range of observations. Scientific inquiry seeks natural causes of natural phenomena. The power of evolution as a unifying theory is its versatility as a natural explanation for a diversity of data from biologists' many subfields, and like all general theories in science, Darwin's theory of evolution continues to be tested by how effectively it can account for additional observations and experimental outcomes. Perhaps the most direct validations of Darwin's theory are provided by the many cases where scientists can actually observe natural selection at work. Natural selection in action. Let's look at two examples of natural selection as a mechanism of evolution in populations: differential predation and gaby populations. Gabies, Brucellia reticulata, are small freshwater fish and that you may know as aquarium bets for many years. John Endwell of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and David Erznick of the University of California, Riverside have studied wide gaby populations living in pools in the Aripo River system on the Caribbean islands. The researcher observed significant differences between populations in the average age and size at which the gabies reach sexual maturity. Notice that. These variations were correlated with the type of predator most active on that population. In some pools, the main predator is the small killifish, which preys predominantly on juvenile gabies. In other pools, the major predator is the pike cichlid, a larger fish that primarily eats sexually mature individuals. Gabies in populations preyed on by pike cichlids begin reproducing at a younger age and are smaller at maturity on average than gabies that are preyed on by killifish. But although correlation with type of predator is suggestive, it does not necessarily indicate cause and effect. To test whether these differences are due to natural selection, Resnick and Endler introduced gabies from pike cichlid pools to new pools that contained killifish but no gabies. Notice that. Over the next 11 years, the researchers compared the age and size at maturity of the transplanted gabies with the original population. After periods of 30 to 60 generations, the transplanted gabies were an average of 14% heavier at maturity than the non-transplanted individuals. Their average age at maturity had also risen. This result supports the hypothesis that natural selection caused the difference in the populations. The conclusion is that because pike cichlids prey mainly on reproductively mature adults, the chance that gaby will survive to reproduce several times is relatively low. The gabies with greatest reproductive success in these spawns are those that mature at a young age and small size, enabling them to produce at least one brood before growing to a size preferred by the big cichlids, but in bonds with killifish. The gabies that survive early predation can grow slowly and still produce many broods of young. This research by Rosink and Endler is one of the many documented examples of evolution in natural settings over relatively short time periods. The evolution of drug resistance HIV, an unsettling example of ongoing natural selection that directly affects our own lives in the evolution of drug resistant pathogens. This is a particular problem in bacteria and viruses with a rapid rates of reproduction, because a variation that makes individuals resistant to a particular drug can increase in frequency very quickly in the population. Consider the example of HIV, human immune deficiency virus, which causes AIDS. Researchers have developed numerous drugs to combat this pathogen, but using these medication selects for viruses resistant to the drugs. Few drug-resistant viruses may be present by chance at the beginning of treatment. Those that survive the early doses pass on the genes that enable them resistant the drug to their progeny, rapidly increasing the frequency of resistant viruses. Notice this figure or a graph. Notice that this illustrates the evolution of HIV resistance to the drug 3. Notice that 3TS. Scientists designate 3TS to interfere with reverse transcriptase, the enzyme HIV uses to copy its RNA genome into the DNA of the human host cell. Because the 3TC molecule is similar to in shape to the cytosine C bearing nucleotide of DNA HIVs, reverse transcriptase picks up a T3S or a 3TS molecule instead of a C-bearing nucleotide and inserts the 3TC into a growing DNA chain. This error terminates further elongation of the DNA and thus blocks reproduction of HIV. The 3TS resistant varieties of HIV carry slightly different versions of reverse transcriptase that are able to discriminate between the drug and the normal C-bearing nucleotide. The viruses that carry these genes have no advantage in the absence of a 3TC. In fact, they replicate more slowly than those that carry the more common form, but once 3TC is added to their environment, it becomes a powerful selecting force favoring reproduction of resistant individuals. These examples highlight two key points about natural selection. First, natural selection is more a process of editing than a creative mechanism. A drug does not create resistant pathogens, it selects for resistant individuals that were already present in the population. Second, natural selection depends on time and place. It favors those characteristics in a genetically variable population that increase fitness in the current local environment. What is adaptive in one situation may be useless or even harmful in another. In the guppy example, individuals that mature at an early age and small size are at an advantage in a pool with pike cyclids, but a disadvantage in a pool with a killifish. Okay. Notice that back to the present of HIV resistant to 3TC, evolution of drug resistance in HIV. Rare resistant viruses multiply quickly when each of these patients is treated with the anti-HIV drug 3TC within just a few weeks. 3TC resistant organisms comprise 100% of the virus population in each case. Notice that patient and notice also patient 2 and 3. Okay.